Good afternoon. That's not good. That's actually bad afternoon. Let's try a good afternoon this time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Much, much better. I do know that I have a very challenging task, which is to keep you all awake after lunch. So I'm going to do my best, right? And there's a special device in my pocket that if you sleep, that device is going to go towards you. So be careful, jokes aside. So folks, it's with my heart full of joy and full of gratitude that I accepted this invitation from very dear friends, yourselves, that are putting together this amazing event. So allow me to start by saying thank you for the opportunity. And also, once again, let's put our hands to everybody that collaborated to this. What a great event. Thank you so much. I'm sure for those of you who could see the spirituality right now, you'll be amazed to see how much goes on that our eyes cannot see. So let's start. Allow me to show you this girl. Her name is Lila Alcorn. Does anybody know her? Okay. Lila Alcorn was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Lila Alcorn was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Midwest of the United States of America. In a town or in a state that really likes to call themselves conservative and with a lot of rigor when it comes to education and things like that. Unfortunately for Lila, she did not see or did not have at home the things that mattered the most for her. She was actually able to find some of these in the school with her friends, with her neighbors, with her best friend that lived right across from her. But in the house, she was not able to find support, help, assistance, empathy, or really love from her parents. And folks, we're not judging, we're just showing you what happened to Lila, because at the age of 17, she could not do that anymore. And she decided, tragically, to end her life. The reason why I wanted to start by saying this, or by showing you or bringing you this topic or this example, is because this is an adolescent, a teenager, a trans teenager, who was going through a lot of turmoil inside of her, that at the very most foundational institution, which is our families, right? She was not able to find the support that she needed. So I want you to keep Lila's topic as we go through this journey for the next 45, 50 minutes. And because that may help you uncover some of the things that we'll be touching. And hopefully, this will serve as an invitation for you to go home, keep reading about the topic, keep getting more knowledge about sexuality. I'm a big fan of looking words in the dictionary. My grandma used to say, my son, if you don't know something, just look it up, right? Back in the days, those huge books, right, that we need to go and look. But right now, it's a lot easier because guess what? There is internet, this thing called internet. So sexuality is the quality or state of being sexual. All of us, right? This is right there. We all know what sexuality is, right? From the material point of view. If we look at sexuality from the condition of having sex, I'd like to believe that all of us here have already had sex in our lives, maybe once or twice, right, before. And if we delve into a little bit of psychology, right, if you look at how Freud described this very complex psychological development process that he puts into stages that really describes how psychosexual, human beings are, right? And these range from when we're born all the way up to when we become adults, right? Hey, can I ask you a favor? Can you change the, to show presenter notes? Sorry, real quick.
Do you know how to do it?
I do, yeah. View, presenter notes.
Marlon pediu a mesma coisa.
Oh, I know why. You need to use a separate display. Sorry, guys. Voila.
Agora sim, agora a gente sai.
All right, coming back. So if you look at how Freud described that, again, I'm not a psychologist. If you have questions, Marla, I'm sure will be able to answer these questions for you. But if you look from the psychological point of view, that's how Freud described our stages into developing towards sexuality. Still in psychology, and this is something that I'm sure you may have seen it or may have heard about it, right? It's called the Pyramid of Needs from Abraham Maslow. And if you look into this pyramid of needs, right? Starts from the bottom, which is we all need to breathe, we all need food. The lunch was great, right? Great lunch. Thank you, cooks or chefs or folks that prepared that food for us. That was amazing. So we all need these things for our lives. And as we really grow towards self-actualization, really becoming fulfilled, human beings, we need these things. Allow me to call out two important ones that you may have seen here, but I'm going to make it easy for you, right? As I tell my wife, honey, I don't really understand smoke signals, right? I like big purple blinking letters that I can read. So I'm going to make it easy on you guys. I know it's after lunch, you're all tired, you ate a lot, but like fat people do, but it's okay. So if you look at physiologically speaking, we all have a need to sex. It's right there, right? That's what psychology tells us, right? But not only that, if you look in the third pyramid, we all have a need of sexual intimacy, right? So it's right there. All of us progress towards that direction, right? And of course, after that, self-esteem and morality and, really understanding of self-actualization, becoming fulfilled, human beings. But, okay, Flavio, it's great, but this is all psychology, but this is like a psychology lecture? No, it's not. So let's talk about adolescence for a little bit. Because the topic, as you may remember, it's sexuality and youth. So for us to understand youth, it's important to understand what happens through the adolescence years. I know for some of you, it might still be very fresh. By some of us, it's been maybe a couple of decades ago, but I won't get into that. So if you look at the adolescent development, this is in a nutshell what happens. We all have these needs, we all have these conditions when we become, we are teenagers, that we need this emotional support. We need physical capabilities, social. That's why you may remember when you were teenagers, you loved to hang out in groups. You were part of several different groups. You had your gang or your crew, your folks that you hung out with. And of course, the cognitive part of it, that we all need to really understand life and start developing our goals and our needs and our North Star when it comes to developing our cognitive capabilities. But if you take a paragraph or you compare this with what Spiritism talks to us about, right? Joanna of the Angelus tells us that adolescence is when the spirit is completing the incarnation. All the aspects of that incarnation are being formed, are being built in a way that that individual is able to really continue, right, his or her own life towards the future. It's a time for new experiences, new behaviors. You learn new things to become a professional in whatnot, or to do other things. You learn new capabilities, right? It's the time that our cognitive mind and brains are really getting more knowledge, right? It's also that phase that you're no longer a child and you're neither an adult. And guess what? A lot of conflict happens. A lot of sometimes anxiety, a lot of uncertainties and insecurities. All these things happen, right, in our lives. I know you may not remember these things, but when we were teenagers, that happened quite a bit. And last but not least, right, a huge lab of hormones. I mean, all these, windmill or mill of hormones that's really driving sometimes what we do with our lives, how we act, how we behave, how we see the world, how we read everything that happens to us, right? And of course, sexual activity towards pleasure starts to happen again. The piece that's important to know here is that it's a time for transition. And in that transition, sexuality plays a huge, huge part, right? So into more details to make a little easier for you guys, right? So look at this from one big picture. All these beautiful teenagers, right? The idea of sexual development, the idea that they're starting to date, right? They're starting to really feel attracted to other people. They're starting to really feel this energy contemplation, that they want to be part of something greater in life, right? Their physical hormones, as we mentioned, starts to develop. They start exchanging the psychic hormones as well, right? They spend time and time talking to people, getting to know them and learning from them and whatnot. It's really important. But at the same time, adolescents, teenagers, we needed a lot of encouragement. We needed a lot of validation for the things that were happening to us. Now, let me ask you this. Let's go back to your adolescence years. Did you find a lot of encouragement? Did you find a lot of validation? Did you find a lot of support? Did you find a lot of empathy from your parents, friends, school, society in general? Did you find all these things in your life? Please don't answer. We don't want to get into more details. But the point I'm trying to make here, folks, is that oftentimes adolescents don't see that, don't face that. And the question that I have for you is, how can Spiritism help? Is there something in Spiritism that we can apply to teenagers so they can see their lives with different angles, with different eyes, with different colors? I believe we do, and my hope is that when this is over, you all leave this room with that mindset as well. So let's review some Spiritist concepts, okay? Because after all, this is a Spiritist lecture, so we need to really bring Spiritist concepts. So, do you think that spirits influence your lives? Raise your hand if you think yes. So raise your hand if you think not. So if you're sleeping, raise your hand because I'm actually missing some hands. This is the time that it has to be, no, just kidding. Of course they do. They do, and quite a bit, to be honest, right? Kardec asked that same question to the spirits, and the immortal beings came back to us and told us their influence upon us is much greater than you can even imagine. They are often the ones that guide you. So if they're the ones that offer guide us, adults, what happens when we are teenagers? Even higher influence, right? So it's that, hey, should I cheat on my wife? No, yeah, right? That kind of, angel and demon kind of thing. But that's our reality. I know this is a cartoon here, but that's the reality that we face every day, right? Spirits are here with us, and they're trying to influence. And sometimes we open these doors here, other times we open those doors there, right? The quality of the door that we open, it's all about us, right? It's all dependent upon our own choices. While we, really pray and believe and think about life, but they're there all the time trying to influence us, right? We can't deny that. We can't deny that. So more concepts. There is in the Spirits book, Roberto mentioned this in the beginning, right? I'm going to mention it again because guess what? This time it's in English. And there's a little difference in translation from the English with the Portuguese version. So, question 200 of the Spirits book, Allan Kardec asked the immortal spirits, are spirits male or female? Simple as that. What about spirits? By the way, this is capital S, so meaning spirits that are not on earth. Are they male or female? And by the way, once again, this question was very interesting because at the time, the world was not as we live today, right? Men were right here, women were below this podium, like all the way down, maybe in the first floor or the basement or something, right? That was the way society used to play. I know we're not even there, we're not there yet. We still live in a patriarchal, society that really gives a lot of, privileges, unearned privileges to, men, and I'd say even heterosexual men and whatnot. But it's important to know that when Kardec asked that question in 1857, right? The society was very different. And I invite you to go back in time and think how it was when you read that question in over 160 years ago. The spirits were very eloquent when they said, not as you understand it, right? Because sex depends on organic composition. So organically speaking is different than we're used to seeing, but yes, they do, right? They are in that sort of scenario. And he goes even beyond to say more things, which goes, love and sympathy, or affinity, right, exist amongst spirits, but they are based on affinity of sentiments instead. So the more connected you are with somebody, right, that's what calls out the relationships, the affections, the emotions that you feel with that individual, right? Not so much so as we see and learn and understand from our concept of this day and age. Continuing, the very next question, right, he touches into a little more specific about male and female, and he asks, can a spirit who has animated the body of a man animate after the body of a woman in your new existence, and vice versa, right? So, again, when you look at this question, to me was dumbfounding. Then he said, it's like, today you have a life that's right here, and then tomorrow can you go back all the way, right? So it was really eye-opening for a lot of people when he asked that question. Because society didn't really talk about these terms back then. Oh, let alone right now, imagine back then, right? So all these topics were considered big taboo based on society, based on the Judeo-Christian philosophies and mindset of the time. But nevertheless, he'll go and ask these questions. And the spirits will say, yes, well, yeah, absolutely, right? It's the very same spirit. The very same spirit that can be today a man, right? That's associated with the body of a man, and then of course, in a gender as a man, tomorrow as a woman, and so forth, right? We go back and forth, right? There's no specific rule that you have to be here, X amount of incarnations, no, right? That's what the spirits are telling Kardec. But they don't stop that. They continue saying that spirits can go there, but since they must progress in every way, in each sex. I'll give an example. My fellow biological man here in the audience, right? It's going to be impossible for us to feel what it is to give birth. In this life, I'm sorry, we will not be able to have that feeling, right? What it is to be a co-creator, to help, right, the universe by delivering a baby. There's no way for us to do that, right? I mean, women are the ones that have this in this life, or in their conditions as females, right? Those that, decide to have kids will be able to really feel and go through that experience. For us, right? We can't even, there's no way for us. We can read about it, we can try to empathize it, but it's not gonna be the same, it's impossible. But don't worry, there is one task, one activity that we guys, right, have a way to do that our, spouses, wives, or, friends won't be able to do it. And I'll tell you why. So when you go home, you open the refrigerator door, right? When you open the refrigerator door, there's this big jar of pickle, right? And the ability of women to open that big jar of pickle, it's impossible. In this life, women, sorry, you guys cannot do that, right? And then my father-in-law comes in, hey, my son, I brought you this tool. They just pop the jar lid and opens very easily. I said, you just, destroyed my whole, I'm just kidding. So jokes aside, what I'm trying to say here, guys, is our incarnation depends on the types of trials, types of learning opportunities that we have. And sometimes we have in this way, other times that way, sometimes in this concept, in this dynamic, in this kind of body, in that kind of body. Each one of these experiences allow us or give us opportunities to grow. Give us opportunities to learn, to further develop, and to make ourselves better. That's what the spirits are telling Kardec, right? We acquire new experiences based on different dynamics of our lives. All right, we touched on that. So what about sex? We heard in the morning, can we say anything that haven't been said about sex that's important to be said? And there's a phrase that I like to bring from the book Action and Reaction, that Andrea Lewis talks about sex as the source of divine creation. Everything and anything you want to create, and I'm not talking about a baby, a reproduction, no, I'm talking about any new project, any new thing you want to build, any new activity, any new engagement, any new effort that you're trying to do, right? The sexual energy is behind that. It's the force that helps us. It's this energy that helps us be creative in a way, right? That's what Andrea Lewis talks about. So it's really important for us to remove, right, the definition or the explanation that sex should and only be used for a reproduction basis, which is not, right? We learned that in the morning. I'm not going to get there, again. If we forward to Emmanuel in his book, Life and Sex, he has a paragraph that I think it's the utmost importance. Because this paragraph talks about when two people establish a union, establish a partnership, right? And he says, when two people establish this sexual communion, a marriage, a partnership, right? A union, however you want to call it, right? An energy circuit begins. And I think Roberto touched a little bit about before, right? That circle of energy begins and they feed from each other, right? They connect to each other. However, Emmanuel goes into more depth by explaining to us, if one ends up injuring the other based on, certain behavior, based on not sustaining their own responsibilities, right? They break their emotional balance. Hey, Flavio, are you saying that Spiritism is against? No, I'm not saying that. Actually, Spiritism is not against anything, guys. We are not here to create a behavioral system. No, we're not. We're here to help through literature, through materials, to give us more ideas, or to really open our minds, to bring peace to our hearts in a way that Christ gave us the message that unfortunately got somewhat corrupted along the way. Let's go back to Leela's example. In Leela's example, if you remember, right, her parents called themselves Christians. Her parents did not believe, right, that the girl that they had in their lives, in their family, in their house was worthwhile living, because they believed that what she was going through, right, was against what Christ taught us. But let me ask you this instead. Didn't Jesus himself say to all of us, bring me the meek, the humble, the afflicted, the anxious, all those that need help? Bring them to me, and I'll give them, right, redemption. He didn't say, bring me those that go to church every Sunday morning, those that no, he didn't say that. Bring me those, no. It's really important, guys, that we demystify the idea of Christianity as something that prohibits a lot of things. To me, this is the point that hits home about Spiritism. It's this body of knowledge that goes beyond what has been told before. They're really disciples that peels the onion, right? Layer by layer of all these important messages that Jesus, our main teacher, has given to us. But based on society, based on human beings, translating the message got corrupted along the way. To me, if Jesus is not here as our teacher, as our Lord in a way that we look up to him, right? As I used to call, to me, he's my compass. And then my wife says, you're so old. Nobody has a compass anymore. Can you change that? Maybe, so let's change it. To me, he's my GPS. When I want to come here, I go in my car's dash and then put the address and tells me, turn left, turn right. Guess what? If I don't want to turn left, I can go straight, I can go left, I can go forward, right? Maybe it's a longer way. And if I keep saying no and no and no, maybe I'm going to New York and ended up in Philadelphia. Or maybe I'm coming from Boston to New York and ended up in Cincinnati, Ohio, Leela's, hometown. But if I follow those directions, in 3.5, 4 hours, I'm here. To me, that's Christianity. That's Spiritism. In a way that when we look at the gospel, when you look at the teachings, they hit home to us. They say, you can be whatever you are, whatever you want. But be careful, because if you do these things, if you disappoint your partner, if you betray your partner, if you do this, if you do that, there will be some consequences. He's not saying don't do this or do that in a way that it's prohibiting us. On the contrary, Spiritism only tells us that for every action, there's a reaction. And every time we act, that we bring conflict, we bring injury to our fellow neighbor, the world's very just, right? We need to repent. We need to repair. We need to fix. We need to do that again. I mean, we need to really bring that back. So in this concept, that to me is the beauty of Spiritism. It's the beauty of it. Because it's not something that's 100% set in stone. You can change it. Well, let alone Kardec said, if science goes left and we are right, stick with science. I'm going to repeat that. Kardec said, if science goes left and we go right, stick with science. And as we learn, a lot of, thanks God, scientific development has happened along the LGBTQ movement, as we know, right? Is it perfect? Oh, by all means. There's a lot of work to be done. But it's getting there. I mean, it's much better than in 1857, for sure. So in this mindset, when we look at what Spiritism tells us or teaches us, it really goes back to the revived Christ, in my humble opinion. When you look at that, when we study, when we open the books, when you get familiar with the idea, with this body of knowledge that's constantly progressing, that's constantly changing and bringing new knowledge, new concepts, incorporating them, to me that's beautiful, that's marvelous. Because it is a guideline for me to think and put that into practice in my life. It doesn't tell me, do this, do that, but it tells me, if you do this, that's going to happen to you. If you do that, that's the consequence, and so forth. So, let me take a different approach here. Let me ask you this. Are you prejudiced? Raise your hand if you're prejudiced. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's only 10%. So for those of you who do not raise your hand, I'd like for you to think about this. When I show you this picture, be honest, let's all be honest here. When I show you this picture, I'd like for you to think the first word that comes to your mind. Are you ready? And by the way, this is from my alma mater, Harvard, the Implicit Project. They did a project with 2,000 students from different colleges, right, through all the campuses, to really understand if they were prejudiced. So, what comes to your mind? Love it. Love it. Unfortunately, that's not what comes to mind to most people, right? Friends, fun, right? Beautiful couple, right? It's a gay couple, right? I was giving a lecture almost as close to this in a different part of the country, and I showed this picture. I got 2 guys in the back room just left the room. This was a topic for teenagers. They just left, right? So it happens because we are prejudiced. And I'm not saying we're prejudiced. No, it's everything, because it's in the air we breathe. We all are. And if you say you're not, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Oh, Flavio, but I have a brother. Yes, you may. But because it's in the air we breathe, we're still prejudiced. Most of us are still racist a little bit, classist, sexist, and all these prejudices. Because our society is such. And as we live in that society, right, there's no other way. Unless you live in a bubble that you don't talk to anybody, you're just by yourself, then you can say you're not prejudiced. So in this Harvard implicit study, they found out that 98% of the students in one of the most prestigious universities in the world are, guess what? Prejudiced. In different ways, shapes, or forms. Might not be in this particular way, in that particular way, but we all are, folks. But the good thing is, we have to understand our prejudices. Because if you go to the doctor and the doctor asks you, are you sick? You say no. What is he or she going to do? Go home then, right? So if you go to the doctor and say, are you sick? Hey, doctor, I don't know, I have a little thing here that I need to really, let's take a look. And that. So if you don't acknowledge that there are a lot of prejudices still, you're never going to work on them. People are going to talk to you about these things, you're just going to put them aside, and that's not going to do you any good. And if you truly want to follow Christ, because I believe you do, we are, right? We're all here already. We could be doing a lot of other great things in the city. It's a beautiful day outside, but we have decided to be here, watch this fat, sweaty guy talk for 55 minutes, right? What does that mean? It means I see this. I put this as a priority for my life. And if you truly believe so, we got to move beyond that, right? We got to acknowledge our prejudices. We got to work on them. And guess what? All of us have prejudices in different ways, shapes, or forms, okay? So much so that this fine gentleman, Dr. William James, one of the greatest researchers of all times, the father of psychology, right? Harvard dean for many, many years, right? Studied spiritualism back in the days, said a lot of people think they are thinking, but in reality, they're merely rearranging their prejudices. They're finding boxes to put them in different parts of their brains. Folks, it's 2019, for Christ's sake. It's a time for us to do better. We can do better, and Spiritism can help us do better. If you're really willing to change yourself, if you're really willing to become a better person, it's time to do better. And guess what? You are able to do better. Because Christ himself said, the load is never bigger than one can carry. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling that a lot of people don't like you, the way you look, the way you talk, the way you are as a person, right? Whatever it is that you're going through, you can be better than that. You can find support. You can see things from a different perspective. Spiritism opens our eyes for other angles that before they were not there, right? Before they were not there. But let me tell you a secret. You want to hear a secret? A very important secret. A very important secret. So, a lot of the conflicts that we have in our lives, right? A lot of them, both personally and collectively, right? They originate in the way we misbehave sexually. The way that we use sex to torment others. The way that we use sex to really bring a lot of affliction towards others. The way that we don't understand the concepts of it. We ended up doing things that are not the best for us and for our neighbors, right? So when we look at these things, right, sometimes they're masked in a way that's not wrong. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? If I'm famous, right, I'm a guy, I'm heterosexual guy, there's 25,000 women who want to have sex with me, right? What's wrong with that? Guys, we mask in a way that we don't comprehend. That's why Spiritism gives us that different types of lenses to look at that environment. It tells us, it teaches us these special nuances about sexuality, about sexual instinct, about the proper use, right, of our sexual abilities in a way that we're collaborating with God. And I know this topic is not very commonly seen or talked or even broached in the Spiritist, mindset, but it's important because as we learn today, right, sexuality is in everything that we do. It's everywhere. In the plants, right? In the animals, it's everywhere. So in a way for us to understand, comprehend, and properly use our sexuality towards our own greater good, towards the greater good to our others, our friends, our family members, it changes. It changes how we see it. It changes how we put that into practice. And it also changes how others see us. Instead of eventually, right, leading to criminal, aggressive behaviors that we see out there. It is really a different mindset. okay, Flavio, but I'm a great guy, I'm a great woman, I'm this and that, and I live a very, decent life, and why do I have to pay attention to this, right? Why are you telling me this? Because from what I'm sitting, everything seems fine, right? Guess what? Andrew Lewis said that all of us individuals have either fallen before or we can still fall when it comes to sex matters. And if we haven't fallen, it will be a matter of time. So for us to avoid that or try to avoid it, it's important that we learn, we gain that knowledge, we really better educate ourselves in a way that a student studies before he or she takes a test, right? That's what it is. So what do? We go back to study, we read, we talk to people, we come across different situations, we understand what's in it for us, what we have to do, right? What we cannot do, what we should not do, and all these things. And then we put this concept of this, map in our heads, right? How we should act in our lives. Understanding our own prejudices, understanding that we are immortal beings, understanding that we are spirits, that as we learned already today, could be in this incarnation as a male, next incarnation as female, this incarnation with one scenario, one concept, one dynamic, in the next incarnation with a different one. And guess what? That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Because each one of these are going to give us different teaching moments. So let me ask you another question. So imagine you go home and you turn the television on, right? This is not cable, so it's public television. Then you get a movie. Maybe that movie is after the third commercial, so to speak, right? Can you understand the whole movie if you grab that by the half of it? Can you? This is the time you're supposed to participate in the conversation, right? So I'm waiting for participation. So very difficult, right? For you to get the gist of the movie entirely. That's like us, right? So when we look at ourselves in this life, some of us with, 40 years old, some of us with 27 years old, right? So when we look at that, we can only see a little bit. We have an idea, same way as we have an idea with our movies. Maybe it's a thriller, maybe it's a crime movie, maybe it's a, drama, maybe it's a horror movie. And you have an idea of the type of movie that we're watching. Of course, we're gonna watch until the end, so right? We get it. But when you look at our lives, it's impossible to understand every little single thing that we've been through. As a matter of fact, it's a blessing that God does not allow us to know every single little thing that we do or we've done in the past, right? One example, to make it a little more easier, the purple blinking lights, right? As I said before. So imagine if in my previous life I have killed my dear friend Fred. We had a beef and then I couldn't really deal with that anymore. I just shot him, killed him, whatever. Then we're in this incarnation and I have this, sense of guilt for what I've done to Fred. What am I gonna do? I know I have to repair that. I'm gonna do everything I can to please him, to help him, and to assist him, and to be the best friend possible that Fred can rely on Flavio for everything, right? Even our names, F and F, and it's great, right? Amazing. How truth is that? How truthful is that gonna be? It's not from here. It is not from here. I'm doing something that, I'm gonna help him. That's not what God wants us to do, right? He wants us to really love each other, to be friends, to be fraternal with each other, to really live, right, as we're a big family. And by the way, raise your hand if there's no one in your family that has a problem. Raise your hand. Nobody, right? Now raise your hand if you are the problem. That's more difficult. So see a couple of hands. Guys, that's exactly what happens, right? So there are some difficulties. There are some challenges that sometimes in a family setting, right, they will be more visible. So in a way that we don't know what we've done in the past, it's important for us to understand that sex, right, or improper use of sex have caused us a lot of atonement, have caused us a lot of affliction, have caused us a lot of traumatic experience in the past. But the beauty, again, of Spiritism is that it teaches us that, yes, that's possible, but if the moment you change, as Jesus said himself, right, Love covers a mountain of sin. So the moment we change our mindset, the moment we look into the life with different eyes, the moment we put different North Star, the moment the gospel becomes our GPS, the moment that happens, we transition. We change as human beings. The old Flavio is no longer here. The new Flavio starts to come up, right? Because the movie continues. And guess what? All of our movies are going to have a happy ending, meaning a very happy, final of it, right? So again, what I'm trying to suggest is that we live in this journey. And it's important to understand where we are in this journey, right? It's really important to understand what we've done, sort of, in the past, and the role that sex, or the improper use of sex, plays and played in it. All right? So, wrapping it up. Let me see if I can do something very, very revolutionary here. No, not yet. It's a couple more. So, you've seen this before, but I'm going to repeat because those are very important topics that Emmanuel wrote for us in 1960, right? He said, do not prohibit sex, because if you do, it's not going to take you anywhere. But instead, proper education. What's the role of it? Why we should do it? Why we should pay attention? Be careful, all these things, right? He said it to us, right? If you look at, don't impose abstinence. Oh, you shouldn't do this. In a way that Leela's parent told her, right? You can never have sex with a boy. That's against God's law, right? Because in the Old Testament, yeah, that's the Judeo, version view of it. That's 3,000 years old, right? So let's move away from that. Because Christ didn't say these things to us, right? So when we do that, we become more respectful, not only to others, but also to ourselves. That's what Emmanuel is telling us. So don't be indisciplined with it, but try to control it. And if you have some, temptations, work on them. It might be something you can really see a professional about it. It may be something that you can maybe go to the Spiritist Center for a treatment, or both, right? There are options for us to continue progressing in the mindset, in the movie, right? Think of the movie analogy. We're continuing with the movie, which is the story of our lives, right? And Emmanuel wraps it up with saying, no to free impulses, but rather responsibility. Because we're all responsible for every single little thing that we do. I'll tell you another story that's funny. I hope it's funny. If not, just laughing, that's pretty fine. That's totally fine. So the story was like this. There was a guy that, came to visit our center in Boston. And he was there once in a while. His name was Ronnie. And, he's a great guy. And all of a sudden, hey, Ronnie, never saw Ronnie anymore, right? Then I go and do some other lectures across the country, and I said, Ronnie, sitting in the front chair. And I said, that guy's Ronnie. What is he doing here? So anyways, finished the talk and ended up going to talk to Ronnie, right? But Ronnie's no longer there. I was like, what happened to Ronnie? I mean, come on, right? I felt a little sad because I've known him for many, many years and just left. I mean, truth behold, he was behind the scenes doing some work on the food, and really, he became a worker in that Spiritist Center, which was amazing to see that, right? And I said, Ronnie, just talk to me, right? Because when we were, going together, you never really, what happened? He goes, Flavio, I'll tell you this. The two most important things that I learned from Spiritism, I'll tell you right now. Sure, I'd love to hear, right? Because that's me trying to understand how people really grab the idea, right? I'm, as you can tell, I'm not sure if you could already or not, I'm very passionate about this, right? So Ronnie said, Flavio, the best thing that happened to me about Spiritism is this. I said, oh, I'm ready, right? Go. Everything that I do, right? Everything that happens to me, it's my responsibility. All the great things that happen to me, I'm responsible. So yeah, it's action and reaction, cause and effect. Yeah, I get it, right? And every quote unquote bad thing that happens to me, I'm also responsible. Because nothing happens by accident, by mistake. I said, I get it, right? It's good. Well, I like it, good. Then, okay, so this is the best part. What's the other part that you say you gotta, so the other part is this. Every good thing that happens to me, I'm responsible. And every quote-unquote bad thing that happens to me, I'm also responsible. And I said, Ronnie, now you're confusing me, man, because you said the same answer, good and bad. I said, Flavio, I'll tell you why. Because when I was starting with Spiritism, I was very depressed. I was very depressed because the way I've always been treated in the life, right, in the world, in my society, right? This is a black guy, African-American, born and raised in Boston, right? And I said, Ronnie, but what are you talking about? I can't empathize because guess what? In this life, I'm not black, so I know what happens. I know that black people have different, I know that from a theoretical perspective, right? Jim Crow, Martin Luther King, I know that, I read it, but I will never be able to really see from your lens. So help me out here. He said, I put a lot of responsibility in my parents, in the neighborhood that I grew up, external responsibilities, right? Spiritism teaches me that I'm also responsible for some of these things. May not in this life, but in a previous one. I said, I love it, right? In the same way that I don't look for blame anymore, I look for ways to, if somebody does something to me that I don't like, guess what? I move on. Before I'll be disgruntled, before I'll be enraged, and I'll try to do something about it, right now, I just don't anymore. So that's the same way that if we are oppressed in any way, if we are feeling something that somebody's telling us, look at it from a different way, right? Look at it from an angle that that's an opportunity for me to forgive somebody. At very least, that's an opportunity for you to forgive something. It's not easy. It's not cookie cutter, right? It takes a lot of courage to do that, but that's the invitation. That's what Christ is inviting us to do every single day. Because guess what? All of us are going to face situations where, right, people are not going to say things that we like. So, going back to the main topic about youth, right? So if you have a son or a daughter that is in their teenager years, or if you have a niece or a nephew, or if you have a neighbor or a friend or anybody that is an adolescent and you need some help, right? Allow me to give you 10 tips for talking with youth, right, about healthy sexuality, right? Again, for me, Spiritism is very practical, right? If I cannot apply this in my daily life, right, it doesn't work for me. So I gotta find ways to really be practical about it. These are some of them. So when talking to teenagers, first of all, be real. I mean, just be real and be accurate, right? Go back. Why? So be real and be accurate. In a way that don't try to create some story, no. Because in this day and age, right, they have access to a lot of information. They can pull their, smartphone sometimes. They can pull their computers and do a lot of research by themselves, right? Be real, be real. Son or daughter, I don't know this. Let's go and ask some people. Let's go and talk to somebody, or Joe or Mary or whatever, whoever it is. Let's go to the library and find some books. See how old I am? Nobody goes to the library anymore. So let's go this and that. So try to find a way that you're real with them. Don't pretend, right? Do a homework. Because sometimes they come to talk to you with more knowledge than you do. As a parent, as an uncle, as an aunt, right? So it's really important. Be open. Why do I say be open? Because a lot of us were not given proper sexuality, studies in our day and age, right? A lot of things were given under the table and this and that, and right? Because our parents, God bless them, they were even in a much harder shape back in their generations. So be open about it. Be open that your son or daughter may tell you something that, I don't know about this. Let me do some research. I'll get back to you on it. Let me talk to some people. Let me be real with you, right? I'd love to help you. Let's walk together on this. But guess what, son or daughter? I don't have the answers. I just don't, right? I don't. Ask away. We talked about that already. Be relevant. Meaning, you can't talk to a 12-year-old the same way you talk to a 17-year-old, right? Be mindful of their, age, of their knowledge already, of their friends group, all these things. It's really, really important, right? Because otherwise you just alienate them and they won't even pay attention to you anymore, right? Take it slow. This is a very important topic. It's how we build our characters, our lives. Don't pretend you're gonna fix this in a 30-minute conversation. Because guess what? You're not, if you're a parent. This is a lifelong, development opportunity for the both of you, right? It's really, really important. Be cool about it. And I'm not saying be cool about it just in a demeaning way. But no, by all means, it's okay, right? Because guess what? God loves us the exact way that we are. Exact way that we are. So be cool about it, right? Because we're together on this. See, if you're my son, if you're my daughter, and we're going through this, guess what? There's a story behind. Remember the movie analogy, right? There's a story behind that. We're continuing that story. So let's be cool about it, right? In a way that also be interactive, right? How do you think about this? What do you think about that? Should we do this? Make it in a two-way street as opposed to you lecturing. Because guess what? We're not the experts. We're just not, right? We're just not. Be a resource. Son, daughter, I don't know this, but I know this guy that I work with. I know this guy that I go to school, or whatever it is, right? Be resourceful. Oh, in the Spiritist Center, Andre came to me and talked to me about homosexuality, transsexuality. Let me talk to him. Let me send him an email. I saw Roberto gave his email address. Let's email him and ask questions. All these things, guys, resources. We have a lot of resources in our fingertips to be helpful, right? To be helpful. That's what it is. And last but not least, right? Think spiritually. Why do I say that? Because all of us are immortal beings, right? We're much more than just a bunch of flesh here that you can see in this life, right? We have a past, we have a brilliant future ahead, right? And we are spiritual beings. So in this move analogy again, we don't know what we did in the last incarnation. We don't know what's going to happen to us in the future. What we know is based on this body of knowledge that we have in front of us, we have the tools and the tool set to, guess what? Find happiness. We do. We really do. Right? So going back to Lila, right? This is the note that she gave before she unfortunately committed suicide, right? The only way I will rest in peace is if one day transgender people aren't treated the way I was. They're treated like humans with valid feelings and human rights. Gender needs to be taught about in schools. The earlier, the better. My death needs to mean something. There's some statistics about suicide. It's a huge epidemic, right, in our society today. It's even worse in the trans community. We see that. It's there. It's data. So my call to action for you, given that we have this tool set of Spiritism, is that Lila's agenda should be our agenda. All of our agendas. And allow me to go back to Martin Luther King, Dr. King. The main way he was able to be successful is when he transitioned from rights for black people, which were due, of course due. He moved away from it, or bigger things, in a way that it's right for poor people. It's right for the oppressed. Abraham Joshua Heschel, the rabbi, marched alongside with him because Jewish people were also prosecuted, were also prejudiced. So it is up to us, cisgender, heterosexual people, to drive this agenda as well. Because if we don't help, guys, it's going to be a much harder journey for our brothers and sisters. With that in mind, I'd like to be a little more aggressive and be a little more, and show a video for you guys. I hope you can hear it.
I found out through a friend calling me before I left for work one night, and I couldn't believe it was true. Right there. Where was their bedroom? It was in the basement.
I know there was a great deal of shaming that went on. The type of behaviors that go on are mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually abusive.
He said, oh, well, that keeps the kids from coming out of their room. I said, so they're basically stuck in their room and can't get out.
She was an incredibly talented artist. She had a case on her phone that was like a little Game Boy, and I commented on it, and then we just ticked off from there.
If people aren't aware when they drive by, it's not a reminder, it's maybe a moment of discovery.
We're just doing an interview. Turn the camera off, please. The eyes of the world were on Cincinnati and on the Cincinnati trans community, and that was a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of fear, a lot of worry.
The transgender community's attitude towards conversion therapy for many years has been that it's a thing of the past, it is not therapy, and it certainly doesn't convert anybody. If anything, it is psychologically damaging and harmful to its subjects.
So that Chris was her best friend and neighbor. So my ask for you is, in the name of Christ, the Christ that we learn from Spiritism is the Christ that loves every single one. Is the Christ that sees we have a huge potential in every single one of us. So if you are a Christ follower, use his footsteps in a way to help all of those who are in need. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanking all the benefactor spirits, the guardian angels of every single one of us here. I wish you from the bottom of my heart a lot of happiness and peace. Thank you.